Margaret Ellison was dying, and she knew it. The doctors had given her 4 months, but that wasn't what scared her. What scared her was leaving this world without a single person to hold her hand. What broke her heart was knowing she had built a fortune worth millions, yet could not buy the one thing she truly needed: someone who loved her for who she was, not what she owned. On the morning of her 62nd birthday, she woke up alone in her 12-bedroom estate, wondering if anyone in the world would even think of her. Her 2 sons had not called. Her sister hadn't written in months. The house was silent. But then, something unexpected happened. A young homeless boy named Samuel knocked on her door, and everything changed. Hello friends, welcome back to our channel. Before we begin today's story, please take a moment to like this video and hit subscribe, and drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. New York, the UK, South Africa, Nigeria. We love hearing from you. Now, let's begin. The sun climbed slowly over Cedarwood Avenue, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Margaret Ellison's estate stood at the end of a long private road, surrounded by iron gates and manicured hedges that had been trimmed every Tuesday for 20 years, whether Margaret was watching or not. From the outside, it looked like a palace. Inside, it felt like an empty museum. Margaret moved carefully down the curved staircase that morning, gripping the banister with both hands. The illness had taken more from her each week. She was thinner than she'd ever been. Her silver hair, which had once turned heads at every boardroom she'd walked into, now hung loosely around her drawn face. The doctors had been honest with her. 4 months, maybe less. She had accepted the prognosis, but she had not accepted dying alone. The estate had 14 rooms, 2 garden courtyards, a wine cellar she hadn't opened in 2 years, and artwork on the walls worth more than most people's homes. Everything was immaculate, everything was expensive, and none of it meant a single thing. Margaret had started with nothing. She grew up in a cramped apartment with her younger sister Ruth, sharing hand-me-down clothes and a dream that one day, life would be different. She built her first business at 27, an interior design firm that eventually became one of the most respected luxury brands in the country. She worked 18-hour days. She sacrificed weekends, holidays, and far too many birthdays, both her own and her children's. She did all of it for her family. For her sons, Derek and Nathan. She wanted them to never know what it felt like to go without. But somewhere along the way, she lost them. Derek, at 37, used to call her every Sunday. Now he only reached out when he needed to dip into her accounts. Nathan, 34, had borrowed money twice this year without a word of thanks. He once told her, during an argument she would never forget, "You'll be gone soon anyway, Mom. Why does it matter who has the money now?" Those words had never left her. And then there was Ruth, her little sister, the one she had helped buy a house, supported through a divorce, and sent money to every single month for a decade. Ruth had grown distant, then jealous, and eventually stopped being a sister at all. Now she only called when she wanted something. Margaret walked into her dining room. Her cook, Mrs. Paulson, had set a small birthday cake on the table that morning. White frosting, 62 candles standing at attention, waiting for a celebration that hadn't come. Margaret picked up her phone and checked her messages. Nothing from Derek, nothing from Nathan, nothing from Ruth. She had sent them all a message the evening before. "Tomorrow is my birthday. I would love to see you. Please come." Not one of them had replied. She walked to the bay window and pressed her palm flat against the cool glass. Outside, the street was alive. A woman walking a dog, a man jogging past, 2 children chasing each other on bicycles. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone had someone. Margaret whispered to herself, "I have everything, so why does it feel like I have nothing?" By early afternoon, the house had not changed. No cars in the driveway, no footsteps on the porch, no voices. Margaret sat in the chair by the window, her favorite spot, and watched the afternoon light shift across the garden. The fatigue was settling into her bones now, that particular kind of tiredness that the illness brought, the kind that rest couldn't fix, but she didn't want to sleep. If she slept, she might miss someone coming. At 2:30, she saw him, a boy walking slowly along the footpath outside her gate. He couldn't have been more than 12 years old. His clothes were several sizes too large, filthy, and torn at the knees. His feet were bare on the hot pavement. His face was thin, the kind of thin that comes from too many days without a proper meal. He stopped in front of her gate. He stood there for a long moment, staring up at the estate. as though trying to decide whether to be amazed or afraid. Then, slowly, he pushed the gate open and walked up the path toward the front door. Margaret's heart quickened. Something about the way he moved, careful, humble, carrying a weight that no child should carry, touched something deep in her chest. Maybe it was because she recognized that walk. She had walked that way once too, decades ago, when hunger and uncertainty were her daily companions. The doorbell rang. Margaret stood, steadied herself, and opened the door. The boy looked up at her. His lips were cracked. His eyes were wide and dark, holding a mixture of hope and shame that Margaret found almost unbearable to look at directly. "Please, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm very hungry. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Could you spare anything? Even something small? I'll be grateful for whatever you have." Margaret studied him for a moment, and then, for the first time all day, she felt something other than sadness. She felt purpose. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Samuel, Mom," he replied, staring at the ground. She smiled. "Well, Samuel, today is my birthday, and do you know what? You are the first guest to show up, which means you won't be eating scraps in my kitchen. You'll be sitting at my table." She opened the door wide. "Come inside, let's celebrate together." Samuel looked up, stunned. "Really, Mom? You mean it?" "I mean every word," Margaret said. "Come on in, Samuel. Let's not waste any more of this birthday." Samuel froze at the threshold. The marble floor stretched out before him like a mirror. The chandelier above scattered light across every surface. The furniture looked as though it had never been sat on. "Come in," Margaret said again, gently. "Don't be shy." "But Mom," Samuel whispered, looking down at his filthy feet, "I'll ruin your floor." Margaret felt her heart shift. Here was a boy with nothing, worried about damaging her things. Her own sons, who had been given everything, had never once been careful with a single item in this house. "Guests are always welcome in this home," she said, "no matter how they arrive." She disappeared down the hallway and returned carrying a bowl of warm water, a bar of soap, and a clean towel. She knelt in front of him and began washing his feet. Samuel nearly leapt out of the chair. "Ma'am, please, you shouldn't. I'm nobody." "Everyone is somebody, Samuel," she said, quietly, and continued washing. Tears fell down Samuel's face. He couldn't remember the last time someone had touched him with kindness. People usually stepped around him like he was part of the pavement, but this woman, this wealthy, elegant woman in her grand home, was kneeling before him like he mattered. In the kitchen, Margaret prepared a plate that nearly buckled under the weight of food. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh rolls still warm from the oven, green beans, a glass of cold juice. Samuel stared at the plate as though it were made of gold. He picked up the fork and then paused. "Aren't you eating too, Mom?" "I will," she said, smiling. "You reminded me I have an appetite after all." They sat across from each other at the long kitchen table, the dying billionaire and the hungry street boy, and they ate together. Samuel told her about his life. His parents had died in a fire 3 years ago when he was 9. He had lived with an uncle for a while, but the man had told him he was too expensive to keep and sent him away. Since then, Samuel had been sleeping wherever he could find shelter. Doorways, church steps, wherever. "I used to love school," he said quietly. "I was good at reading. I liked maths. But you can't go to school when you don't have an address." Margaret listened without interrupting. She watched this child, with every reason to be broken and bitter, speak with a quiet dignity that shamed her, though he didn't know it. "What do you dream about, Samuel?" she asked. "If you could have anything in the world, what would it be?" He thought about it carefully. "A family," he said. "Not a rich family, just people who are glad I exist. And school. And maybe one day, I want to help other kids like me. Kids who don't have anyone." Margaret set down her fork. "Those are the most beautiful dreams I've heard in years." "Do you think dreams come true?" Samuel asked. "I know they do," she said. And she meant it. They brought out the birthday cake. Margaret lit the candles and invited Samuel to count them aloud. 62 small flames flickering in the kitchen. Then she asked him to sing with her. He did. A little off-key, completely earnest, completely wonderful. "Make a wish," he said eagerly. Margaret closed her eyes. She had so many wishes, but standing there with Samuel beside her, she made only one, that this boy, this pure, remarkable boy, would get the chance at a life he deserved. She blew out the candles. Samuel cheered like it was the greatest thing he'd ever witnessed. They ate cake and talked for hours. Samuel laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and bright, for the first time in what he admitted felt like forever. Margaret found herself laughing too, in a way she hadn't since before the diagnosis. As the sun began to lower, Samuel stood up. "I should go, Mom. Thank you. This has been the best day I've had in 3 years." "Where will you sleep tonight?" Margaret asked. "There's a spot near the old library," he said. "A vent that blows warm air. It's not bad." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, "Stay here tonight, Samuel." His eyes went wide. "Here? In your house? I have 14 rooms and not one of them has a guest in it. Pick whichever you like, and tomorrow morning we'll have breakfast together." Samuel looked as though he couldn't trust what he was hearing. "But what if your family comes?" A shadow crossed Margaret's face. "My family didn't come today. I don't think they will." She looked at him steadily. "Please stay." He stayed. That night, Samuel showered for the first time in weeks, put on clean clothes Margaret had found for him, and climbed into a bed so soft he thought he might be dreaming. He lay there in the dark and whispered a prayer. "Thank you, God, for Mrs. Margaret. Please bless her, and please help her family remember how much she needs them." Downstairs, Margaret sat in the living room with her phone in her lap. Still no messages. Her birthday was nearly over, and yet, for the first time in months, she did not feel empty. She thought about Samuel upstairs, safe and warm, sleeping like someone who finally felt safe. And she thought, maybe family isn't always who you're born to. Maybe sometimes it knocks on your door on a birthday afternoon, barefoot and hungry and full of more goodness than most people manage in a lifetime. At 8 o'clock that night, Margaret heard cars in the driveway. She sat up. Her heart did something complicated, part hope, part dread. The front door opened. Derek walked in, dressed in an expensive suit that had probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Behind him came Nathan, not looking up from his phone. And behind them both was Ruth, holding a small gift bag and wearing the particular expression of someone fulfilling an obligation. "Surprise," they said, more or less together, though none of them looked surprised to be there, or particularly glad. "Happy birthday, Mom," Derek said, hugging her quickly, the way you'd hug a colleague you barely knew. "Sorry we're late. I had a dinner meeting that ran over." "Yeah, happy birthday," Nathan said, still typing on his phone. "Busy day." Ruth handed over the gift bag. "I would have been here earlier, but you know how it is." She paused. "Actually, speaking of, I've been meaning to ask if you could help me out this month. Things have been a bit tight." Not 2 minutes in the door. Margaret took the bag without a word. The three of them moved into the kitchen, poured glasses of champagne they'd brought for themselves, and helped themselves to what remained of the birthday cake, which was less than half of it because Margaret and Samuel had eaten the rest hours earlier. "Who ate the cake?" Derek asked, frowning at the dish. "I shared it with a guest," Margaret said evenly. "A guest?" Nathan looked up from his phone for the first time. "Who came?" Before she could answer, footsteps descended the staircase. Samuel, awoken by the voices, still rubbing his eyes, appeared at the top of the stairs. He saw the strangers and went completely still. Derek, Nathan, and Ruth all turned to stare. "Who?" Derek said slowly. "Is that?" "That is Samuel," Margaret said. "My guest. I invited him to stay." "Your guest." Nathan's eyes moved slowly from the boy to his mother and back again. "Mom, that's a homeless kid. He's wearing your spare clothes. What is he doing in this house?" "I told you, he's my guest." "He's a street child," Ruth said, stepping closer to the stairs and peering at Samuel. "Margaret, have you lost your mind? You can't bring a homeless child into your home. He could steal from you. He hasn't stolen anything," Margaret said sharply. "He came to me asking for food. I gave him food. I gave him a place to sleep. That's what decent people do." "Decent people don't let strange children spend the night in their estate," Derek snapped. He was already walking toward the stairs. Samuel pressed himself against the wall, his voice small and frightened. "I didn't do anything wrong. I promise." "Nobody asked you," Nathan said. He grabbed Samuel by the arm. Samuel cried out. "Let him go," Margaret said, her voice rising. "Let him go right now." "He doesn't belong here," Derek said, and together he and Nathan half dragged Samuel toward the door while Ruth pulled it open. "Stop," Margaret pleaded, but her illness made her legs weak, her movements slow. They shoved Samuel out. He fell on the front step, scraping both palms on the stone. He looked up at them with tears streaming down his face, then past them, searching for Margaret. "Thank you for dinner, Mrs. Margaret," he managed, his voice breaking. "And happy birthday. I'll never forget your kindness." The door slammed in his face. Derek turned to his mother. "You can thank us later." Margaret stood in her hallway, trembling. Not from the illness this time, from something far more painful. She looked at the three people in front of her, her sons, her sister, and she saw them clearly, not with the forgiving lens of a mother or the blind loyalty of a sister. Clearly, selfish, cold, cruel. "How could you treat a child that way?" she whispered. "Oh, please," Nathan said, dropping onto the couch. "He was obviously working you. Rich old lady alone in a big house. That's exactly the kind of mark they look for." "He was 12 years old," Margaret said. "He had no shoes. He asked for food." "And you gave him your spare bedroom," Derek said flatly. "Mom, you're not well. You're emotional. You're not thinking straight." "Get out," she said quietly. They all looked at her. "Get out of my house," she repeated, louder. "Mom, come on. All of you, leave, now." She stood in the middle of the room and she didn't move, didn't waver, didn't soften her voice. And one by one, with protests and eye rolls and a final request from Ruth about the loan, they filed out. The door closed behind them. Their cars reversed down the drive and disappeared into the night. Silence returned to the estate. But this time, Margaret didn't cry. She sat in the chair by the window and made a quiet decision. Tomorrow, she would find Samuel. She would apologize for what her family had done, and she would make things right. Meanwhile, Samuel ran through the dark streets, eyes blurred with tears, hands stinging from the fall. He found his spot behind the library. He curled up against the wall, knees to his chest, and he wept, not from hunger, but from heartbreak. For a few hours that afternoon, he had felt like a person who mattered, and then they had reminded him, cruelly and efficiently, that he was wrong. He cried himself to sleep, wondering if he would ever feel safe again. But even in the dark, he thought of Mrs. Margaret, and something in him, something stubborn and luminous and entirely his, refused to go out. When morning came, Samuel woke with his body aching and his mind already made up. He couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Margaret. Her family had been cruel to her too, yelling at her, dismissing her, leaving on her birthday like she was an inconvenience. She was sick, she was alone, and she had been kinder to him in one afternoon than most people had managed in 3 years. Part of him was afraid to go back. What if her sons were still there? What if they called the police this time? But the bigger part of him, the part that had been raised by parents who believed in showing up for people, knew what he had to do. He walked for 40 minutes back to Cedarwood Avenue. When he reached the estate, he went around to the back, the way a guest who wasn't sure of his welcome might. He found Margaret in the garden. She was lying very still on a sun chair, her skin flushed red, her breathing unsteady. She had come outside after her family left the night before and fallen asleep in the morning heat. "Mrs. Margaret," Samuel said, crouching beside her. "Mrs. Margaret, wake up." Her eyes opened slowly. She looked at him for a long moment, as though she wasn't sure he was real. Then she exhaled. "Samuel," she breathed, "you came back." "I was worried about you," he said. "You've been out in the sun too long. You need to go inside." He helped her up, slowly and carefully, and walked her back into the house. He found cream in the bathroom cabinet and applied it to her burned skin with gentle hands. He wet a cool cloth and laid it against her forehead. "My mother used to do this," he said quietly, "when I was little and got too much sun." Margaret watched him and felt something she hadn't felt in a long, long time, taken care of. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry for what they did to you." "It's not your fault," Samuel said. "You were kind, they weren't. Those are two different things." He sat beside her for a while. Then she told him the truth, all of it, the illness, the prognosis, the months she had left. Samuel's face fell. "That's not fair," he said. "You're a good person." "Maybe," she said, "but I've learned that life isn't always fair. What matters is what you do with the time you have." She looked at him carefully. "Samuel, I'd like you to stay, not just tonight. I mean, stay here, with me. Keep me company. Let me teach you things. Let you teach me things. Be my family, since it seems mine has made other arrangements." Samuel stared at her. "You mean it?" "From this moment on," she said, "you are not my guest. You are my family, if you'll have me." He hugged her then, carefully, because of her sunburn, because of her frailty. but completely, and she held him back with everything she had left. For the weeks that followed, Samuel became Margaret's world, and she became his. Every morning, he made her tea exactly the way she liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cold water so it wasn't too hot to drink. He helped her take her medications on time. He read to her in the afternoons from the enormous library of books she'd collected over 40 years. He pushed her wheelchair through the garden and narrated everything he saw, the particular shade of the roses, the way the light hit the fountain, a fat bird arguing with a thinner one over a piece of crust. He made her laugh every single day. In return, Margaret became his teacher. She helped him work through books. His reading was strong, but had gaps from 3 years out of school. She taught him about finance, about how her business worked, about the difference between earning money and building wealth. She told him about integrity, about the way her own father had raised her to treat everyone with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. You already know most of this, she told him once, with a smile. You just needed someone to tell you that you know it. Her children called occasionally, still asking about money, still complaining about things. Margaret answered calmly, said little, and hung up. Ruth called twice to ask about loans. Margaret said no, and meant it. One evening, as Samuel finished washing the dinner dishes, Margaret called him to her chair. Sit down, Samuel. I need to tell you something important. He sat. He could tell from her expression that this was serious. I called my lawyer last week, she said. His name is Homel3ss. He's been with me for 23 years. I asked him to come to the house and help me make some changes. Samuel waited. I changed my will, Margaret said. A long pause. I had originally left my estate equally between Derek and Nathan, the house, the business, the accounts, everything. But after careful thought, I've made a different decision. She held his gaze. I've made you my sole heir, Samuel. When I die, everything I own passes to you. Samuel did not speak. He stared at her. Before you say anything, she continued, I want you to understand why. You came to my door with nothing. You never asked me for a single thing beyond food. You came back the morning after my family threw you out. Not for money, not for shelter, but because you were worried about me. In all my years, I have never known anyone who gave so freely and asked for so little. Mrs. Margaret, I know what you're going to say, that you don't deserve it, that it should go to my children. But listen to me. My children were given everything and became nothing. You were given nothing and became someone extraordinary. That tells me everything I need to know about who should carry on what I've built. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. They'll be furious. Yes, she agreed. They will, which is why I need you to remember something. My lawyer, Thomas, his office is at 17 Birchwood Lane, the green building on the corner. If anything happens, if anyone tries to frighten you or push you out, you go straight there. Promise me. I promise, Samuel said. And Samuel, use this gift the right way. Help people, especially children who have no one. That's my only instruction. She squeezed his hand. The rest I leave entirely to you, because I trust you. It was the first time in Samuel's life that anyone had said those words to him. I trust you. He held them like something precious. Margaret grew weaker with each passing week, but she grew quieter in a different way. Not the lonely quiet of before, but something more like peace. She had stopped being afraid. One evening, her breathing became shallow and labored. Samuel sat beside her bed and held her hand. He read to her, a chapter from her favorite book, about a woman who crossed an ocean to begin again. When he reached the end of the chapter, Margaret opened her eyes and looked at him. Come closer, Samuel. He leaned in. When I'm gone, she said, her voice thread-like but steady, remember that you were loved. Not because of what you could offer, not because of what you were worth, simply because of who you are. She paused to breathe. That is a rare thing. Hold on to it. Please don't go, Samuel said, his voice breaking. You're the only family I have. You will not be alone, she said. You have Thomas. You have the future. You have every child you're going to help someday. They just don't know you yet. A faint smile. You have my love. And that doesn't go anywhere. She lifted her hand and rested it briefly against his face. Thank you, she whispered, for saving me from dying alone. Thank you, he said, for seeing me. Margaret Ellison closed her eyes slowly, like someone setting down a weight they had carried for a long time, and then she was still. Samuel sat beside her until the room grew fully dark. He held her hand and didn't let go until the morning light began at the edge of the curtains. Then he picked up the phone she had left him with one number saved. "Mr. Osei," he said, when the line connected. "This is Samuel. Mrs. Margaret. She's gone." A pause, then a calm, kind voice. "I'll be there within the hour. Don't let anyone in. You're safe. I'm coming." Thomas Osei arrived at the estate looking exactly as Margaret had once described him. Measured, unhurried. The kind of man whose very presence suggested that things would be handled correctly. He was tall, silver-haired, and wore a dark suit. He carried a leather briefcase with 2 clasps. When Samuel opened the door, he looked at the boy for a moment and then said, quietly, "She spoke about you often. She called you her second chance." Samuel felt the words land somewhere deep. Thomas made the necessary calls. The doctor, the funeral home, Derek and Nathan, Ruth. "They'll be here quickly," he told Samuel when the calls were done, "and they will not be pleasant. So here's what I need you to do. Say very little. Let me speak. Sign nothing, absolutely nothing, without showing it to me first. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Now pack your important things in a bag. Keep it with you. If they force you out of this house today, you'll come home with me. My wife has already prepared a room." The 3 of them arrived within 90 minutes. Derek came in like a man who had already decided how the afternoon would go. Nathan was quiet, but his eyes moved around the room, cataloging things. Ruth was crying, or performing crying. Samuel found it difficult to tell. When they saw Samuel, the temperature dropped. "What is he still doing here?" Derek demanded. "Samuel is here at the express instruction of Mrs. Ellison," Thomas said calmly. "He has every right to be present." "He's a child she met 3 weeks ago," Nathan said. "He has no rights in this house." "That's a matter we'll clarify shortly," Thomas replied. "For now, I suggest we proceed with dignity. Your mother deserves at least that." The reading of the will took place in the formal sitting room. Thomas read it in full, without drama, without pause. His voice was steady and professional, and each sentence landed in the room like something irreversible. To Ruth, $20,000, with a personal note expressing love and the hope that she would one day want something more than money. To Derek and Nathan, $50,000 each, a gesture of love, not inheritance. The bulk of the estate, the property, the business, the investments and accounts, went entirely to Samuel. The room went silent. Then Nathan stood up so fast his chair scraped back. "This is a fraud," he said. "She was dying. She was confused. He manipulated her. I have sworn testimony from 2 independent physicians confirming that your mother was of complete and sound mind when she signed this document," Thomas said. "I also have a video recording she made voluntarily, in which she explains her decision in her own words, at length." "We'll challenge this," Derek said coldly. "We'll take it to every court available to us." "You may," Thomas said. "You'll lose, but you may." Thomas stood. "This meeting is concluded. Samuel will be accompanying me. If any of you attempts to contact or intimidate this child, you will be hearing from my office by end of business the same day. I trust I've made myself clear." He had. They left. The door closed. Samuel sat in the quiet and looked at Thomas. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Thomas said, "you come home with me, and we wait for justice to do its job." The legal challenge came swiftly, as Thomas had predicted. Derek and Nathan hired a team of lawyers and filed suit within the week, claiming Margaret had been mentally incapacitated, that Samuel had gained her trust under false pretenses, that the will was invalid. The case moved through the courts over the following months. Samuel lived with Thomas and his wife Eleanor, who fed him, enrolled him in school, and gave him the quiet consistency he had never had. He studied hard. He was good at reading, better at mathematics, and extraordinary at understanding people, a skill honed by 3 years of learning to read strangers' intentions before they acted on them. The trial lasted 4 days. Thomas presented the medical reports. He brought in Mrs. Paulson, the cook, who confirmed she had watched Samuel care for Margaret every day. The tea, the medication, the wheelchair through the garden, the reading aloud, the laughter. She cried when she testified. So did several members of the gallery. Derek and Nathan's lawyers were skilled and expensive. They questioned Samuel for 3 hours, probing for inconsistency, for greed, for any sign that he had engineered the relationship. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. But the most important moment came on the afternoon of the 3rd day. Thomas played a recording. The courtroom went quiet as Margaret Ellison's voice filled the room, weak but clear, unhurried, certain. She spoke for 11 minutes. She described her loneliness before Samuel arrived. She described her children's absences, their indifference, the birthday no one came to. She described the afternoon Samuel knocked on her door and every moment that followed. She spoke about the night her sons threw him out of the house and how it clarified, with perfect finality, the difference between the people in her life who took and the one who gave. "I am not making this decision in grief," she said on the recording. "I am not confused. I am not being coerced. I am making this decision in the clearest state of mind I have experienced in years, because Samuel gave me the gift of clarity. He reminded me what love actually looks like. If my sons challenge this, they will only prove my point. I hope they don't, but I suspect they will." She paused on the recording. The courtroom was absolutely still. "Samuel, if you're hearing this in a courtroom, it means everything I hoped wouldn't happen is happening. Stay calm. You have done nothing wrong. You have been nothing but good. The law is on your side, and so is every good thing I had left to give. Use it well. I love you." The judge took 2 days to deliberate. His ruling was 12 pages. The closing paragraph read, in part, "The court finds that the late Margaret Ellison possessed full testamentary capacity at the time of signing. There is no credible evidence of undue influence or manipulation. The decision to leave her estate to Samuel was deliberate, documented, and made freely. The will stands in its entirety. The challenge is dismissed with prejudice." Samuel sat between Thomas and Eleanor and read the ruling twice. Then he covered his face with both hands and wept. The years that followed moved faster than Samuel expected. He finished school. He won a scholarship, the kind that comes to students who've earned it, and studied business and social development at university. He spent his summers working inside Margaret's old company, learning it from every angle, the way she had told him she once learned her own, from the ground up, from the inside out. When he turned 21, he assumed full control of the estate. The first thing he did was establish a foundation. He called it the Ellison Fund. Its mandate was simple: shelter, nutrition, education, and mentorship for children living without stable homes or family. Within 3 years, the Ellison Fund had supported over 400 children. Within 7, it had opened 6 residential learning centers across the country. Samuel hired staff who had themselves once been without homes or prospects. He paid them well and told them the same thing Margaret had once told him: "You are somebody, and the children in your care need to know they are too." He kept the furniture business running and expanded it, taking it into markets Margaret had never tried. He added a charitable arm that provided furnishings and supplies to schools and shelters at no cost. He honored her legacy at every turn, not because he had to, but because he understood, better than anyone, what she had built it all for. Every year on Margaret's birthday, he brought flowers to her grave and sat with her for a while. He told her about the children, about the buildings, about the lives. He told her about the time a small girl in one of the centers drew a picture of the house and said it was the first place she'd ever felt safe. "We're doing all right, Mrs. Margaret," he would say. "We're doing all right." In the 3rd year after the trial, he received a letter. The return address was Derek's. He almost didn't open it. Inside was a single page, no letterhead, just handwriting. "Samuel, I know I have no right to ask for anything from you. I don't want anything. I just wanted to tell you that I've been volunteering at a shelter for the past year. Not because it fixes anything, not to make myself feel better. I'm not sure yet what it's for. Maybe it's just the right thing to do, finally. You were right about what our mother was trying to teach us. It took everything being taken away before I could hear it. I'm sorry." "Derek," Samuel wrote back. He didn't offer money or reconciliation or absolution. He offered a meeting, a cup of coffee, and a conversation. Nothing more. Derek came. They talked for 2 hours. Samuel told him about Margaret's final weeks, the garden walks, the laughter, the books, things Derek had not known because he had not been there. "She never stopped loving you," Samuel said. "She just needed you to show up." Derek looked out the window for a long time. "I know," he said. Nathan never wrote, but on the 10th anniversary of Margaret's death, Samuel spotted him at the back of the memorial gathering. Nathan stood apart from the crowd, not speaking to anyone. Samuel walked over. "She would have wanted you here," Samuel said, simply. Nathan didn't answer for a moment. Then he said, "I donated money to the fund last month. It wasn't much." "It was something," Samuel said. They stood together in silence, looking at the house. Then Nathan left quietly, without ceremony. Samuel let him go. On the 20th anniversary of the day he knocked on a stranger's door, Samuel stood before an audience of 600 people in the main hall of the Ellison Fund's largest residential center. He was 32 years old now. He stood straight and calm and unhurried at the podium, the way Margaret had always stood in the photographs she'd shown him from her business years. Behind him was a banner with the foundation's emblem, a simple image of an open door. He told a story. He told it the way he always did, plainly, without exaggeration, because the truth was already extraordinary enough. A hungry boy, a lonely woman, a birthday that changed 2 lives, a family that failed her, a will that shocked a courtroom, a promise kept across 20 years. Mrs. Margaret taught me that family is not who shares your blood, he said. Family is who shows up. Family is who sees you, not the version of you that's useful or convenient, but the actual you, the hungry and frightened and dreaming you. She saw me when I had nothing and she said, "You are somebody." I have spent my adult life trying to say the same thing to every child who walks through our doors. He paused. I was 12 years old and I knocked on a door because I was hungry. What I found on the other side of it was a woman who needed me as much as I needed her. Neither of us knew it then. I think about that often. How close we both came to missing each other. How different everything would be if she had simply not answered the door. He looked out across the room. Among the audience, Homel3ss and Eleanor, in their 80s now, still sharp, still present, still the people who had given him stability when he had none. A row of young people in their late teens, residents of the fund's first cohort, now with families and careers of their own. Derek, sitting quietly near the back, a little older, a little softer, and an empty seat in the front row, reserved, as it was every year, for Margaret. She gave me money, Samuel said. She gave me a home. She gave me an education, and a foundation, and a chance. But the thing she gave me first, before any of that, was simpler than all of it. She opened the door. She looked at me. She said, "You are my guest, and today you will sit at my table." I was nobody, and she treated me like somebody. That's it. That's the whole story. That's what changed everything. So here is what I ask of anyone watching or listening. Look around you. Find a person in your life who is being treated like nobody, and treat them like somebody. You have no idea what that cost you. You have no idea what it could mean to them. He stepped back from the podium. The room rose, and somewhere, in a quiet corner of the world that only Samuel knew how to find, Margaret Ellison smiled. And that, friends, is the story of Samuel and Margaret. A woman who had everything except what mattered. A boy who had nothing except the most important thing, a good heart. One afternoon changed 2 lives. One act of kindness became a legacy that outlasted them both. Mrs. Margaret didn't just leave Samuel money. She left him a mission, and he honored it. Not because the law required it, not because he had to, but because when someone loves you like that, you carry it forward. You carry it into every open door and every empty plate, and every child who needs someone to say, "I see you. You are somebody." If this story moved you, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and leave a comment. Tell us, who in your life has been a Margaret to you? Or maybe you were the Samuel. We want to know. We'll see you in the next story. Take care of each other out there.